From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. It is every police leader's responsibility to not only continually develop their own skills and abilities, but to prepare the next generation of leaders. Retired Captain William Frost helps you meet this task by providing a clear blueprint to follow in his book, Leadership in Law Enforcement. To learn more about his book and other consulting and training he provides, go to www.code33consulting.com. That's code33consulting.com. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric, and today I'm joined by Lisa and Jim. Lisa, Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to be here, Eric.
Yeah, we have a doctor panel, but a married couple, we have East meets West. That's a very intriguing dynamic with what we're going to be talking about, which is both of your backgrounds like melding together, not just as a couple, but in this concept of retreat and the couples retreat that you just hosted that me and Chelsea were a part of. And there's just so many directions that I want to go with this, that I'd love to go with this, especially with both of your unique professional backgrounds and insights to mental health, physical health. And we will get into a bit of that. But that is what we're choosing to focus on is retreat, because we could go for hours and hours. And for a little bit more, I want to say I am kind of glad that we didn't record right away. In some ways, I wish I did, because how do you recapture that excitement after all the insights that Chelsea and I personally got, and then the group got, the connection, that rooted connection was what the retreat was called. But then also like part of what I want to talk about at the end is like, how do we get some of these slivers of like amazing goodness that we were kind of, immersed in, and how do we integrate this into our day to day, and that concept of reintegration, which is like kind of the thing, like you can't be on retreat forever. You got this life to go back to. So on the words, like the re words of like retreat, reintegration.
Yes.
And that was Dr. Jim's thing, like recuperation, reinvigoration. But that is my intro for now. So yeah, why don't we start with Dr. Lisa? Can you say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Hi, I'm Lisa Bullis. I'm an acupuncturist, herbalist, and I practice classical Chinese medicine. Having been in practice since 2003, I've worked in a variety of settings, starting and running high-volume clinics for the first 10 years of my career, working with a nonprofit and in a rehab hospital for the following 10 years, during which I was focusing on using acupuncture and herbs in the treatment of spinal cord injuries, brain injuries, and stroke. Now, in the third decade of my career, I am back in private practice and really enjoying being back in business for myself.
Fantastic. I love how like with the advent of medical science and physiology and just wellness, like this wellness culture that we're luckily getting more attuned to in the mainstream, so many things like they get proven by some study, but then it goes back to this like ancient wisdom that everyone's grandma's grandma like knew to be true. We just now have some like lab-based data that makes us now buy into it. So no, I love that. Thank you so much. And Dr. Jim, about yourself.
Yeah, well, just to pick up on that, I mean, I often have thought and shared with clients that I think the wisdom that science is sort of discovering now, like the poets and the artists have known for millennia. So I think that's a really true thing. Just a little bit about me. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been really in private practice for a little over 15 years. And the focus of my work has been broadly the umbrella of like men's relational health. So I do men's groups in my practice, work with a lot of men individually, and then I work with them in the context of their relationships and like do a lot of couples therapy. And so, yeah, I mean, kind of the reason for that interest is just holding up a mirror to myself. These are areas that have been really areas that I've wanted to grow and learn, and wounds that I've needed to heal in my own life. So that's a thing that kind of drew me into it in part. And then, in addition to that, I've been working with Lisa and collaborating with her for a long time. We've been married over 20 years, but we've known each other since we were teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 kids together. So that's a big ongoing group project that we're involved in. So that's a little about me and a little bit about us.
Yeah, I do love that, and I like it. It's not my novel idea. We've heard it different places, and I can't cite it. But looking at marriage like a project, or looking like at a family like a project, because then that implies that there's always work to be done. There's always this challenge in this building. Like you're just not done, and that's how we all ought to look at this thing called life and health. And so I love that. Thank you for providing that framework. Also, man, how do I not just mention Laura? Like
Yeah.
Lisa's sister, Laura, who's been on the show before. I don't have the episode in front of me, but from 50 Mental Health. And so, yeah, just a connection of that's how we got connected and learned about the retreat, which we're so grateful for. And just another like universe type of surprise of like someone you meet, you have this amazing connection and kind of synergy in this pursuit and passion of first responder wellness, and then come to later like get to know each other more, and then to meet both of you through that. What a blessing, what a gift.
Amen.
Yeah,
we could talk about Laura forever, but
we have to save that for another episode. We're just gonna have Lisa she's gonna listen to this and be like, WTF, like we're gonna have Lisa just talk about Laura as a kid.
She'd be like, yeah, you guys should do an episode about me.
She probably would. She would probably be like, yeah, I'm freaking awesome and hilarious, so why wouldn't you do an episode about me? But yeah, like, so let's focus on retreat. And Jim just mentioned, like, yeah, we have this wisdom from so long ago. You look at philosophy, and these like thought leaders are just what was known to be true. I've been nerding out huge on, Stoicism, Buddhism, and like when you take a lens and you zoom out like enough, they're all kind of saying the same thing, like this connectedness, this like peace and calm. It's almost like my personality type, and I know a lot of first responders, like these driven types that are listening to something like this, they're like, I need to find and analyze and go down the rabbit hole deep enough to be like, oh, I actually need to zoom out. Like I've zoomed in so much that now I just need to zoom out and just be. And so that's been a work in progress and a struggle at times for me. And so when we think about retreat, it's like, it's so much more than taking a vacation. It's so much more than just like getting away. And I'm curious if you can both talk about what it means to you and how it came to be this thing that you're like, we want to build this and we want to share this insight and these lessons and experience with others.
Well, yeah. So I think for years, Jim and I have talked about, man, I wonder if we could ever work together, or like, how could we find a coalescing point? And I think as our practices have evolved independently, we found ourselves kind of saying the same things, but with different words. And our goal really with blending West with East was just to help people understand their bodies and emotions in different ways, give them different words to say the same thing. And kind of like we talked about on our retreat, like Jim might be talking about attachment, but I would be talking about the Ren channel and explaining how we see attachment injuries manifest in physical symptoms. Or Jim would talk about IFS, internal family systems, and I would talk about the Yin Wei Mai channel in classical Chinese medicine. And so I think that we started realizing this, and then we had a personal experience with a retreat, attending a retreat 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, we thought we had a good marriage. We already had 2 kids. I was pregnant with our third. And it just really changed our relationship attending that retreat. And I think that was that experience, along with this growing and realizing that we were talking about the same things, led to the birth of this retreat, Rooted Connection.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that distinguishes a retreat is like from a vacation, right? I mean, both give you a chance to get away, both give you a chance to slow down, shift gears. I think a retreat, the thing that really distinguishes it is that intention. It's that time with intention. And that's really like a powerful combination. Where I was talking to Lisa earlier, I was thinking about this, that, it's like when you're trying to learn a language and you're going to a class once a week, you're picking up some of the language and stuff, but the best way to learn a language, as many of us know, is to do language immersion, right? To go like live in that country for a week, and you start to like have to use the language, right? You start to like dream in that language, right? It's that immersion and intention that I think is a lot of what gives retreat its power and makes it absolutely transformative. I mean, like Lisa said, it's something we've experienced firsthand. And since that retreat, we've done other retreats, maybe not as specific to like working on our relationship, but we've kind of brought that intention around retreat as well. So I'm sure we'll talk about more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a huge such a huge word and concept to focus on, which is intention. Like we can all be doing things, we all know going through the motions, and that was a really powerful thing for something that Chelsea and I were talking about and being aware of. Like it wasn't a place of shame, but we were just recognizing like we are crushing it in this like couple thing and this family thing. Like we're both like working full time or more than, we're raising a kid, we're doing fun things, we're getting out, we're like living this life we want. However, like there's still something like that we feel like we were missing, which was saving enough energy and focus on each other rather than sure quality time. But what does that mean? Is it watching TV and sharing some laughs and cuddles because we really don't have the mental or emotional bandwidth left at the end of the day, which is like ultimately I'm glad you hit on it the way you both did, which is we can go on a vacation and cool, there's sun and there's some aspect of decompression, but so different when you have intention. And for I think most people that listen, I say this a few times, for people that listen in, they're probably on board. But for those that are newer to this idea, it's like I can go on a walk and I could be absolutely distracted. I could be looking at my phone. I could be doing these things. My dog could be pulling. I could be getting upset about that. I could be thinking about this thing at work and shoot, what time is it? I need to get back and all these other things I have to deal with today and tomorrow. Or I could just be like, I got 10 minutes. It's not a ton of time, right? But I'm actually going to put my phone on airplane mode. I'm either going to listen to my favorite music or turn it off and just listen to the birds. I'm going to look up. I'm going to look at the sky. I'm going to breathe the air. And like, what two different, extremely different experiences I think anyone could be acknowledging of, even if they weren't into like this type of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
when you designed the retreat, you've been on a retreat. What are some of the goals that as you started to build this out and you're like, okay, this is what we recognize and we got a lot from, and then what people kind of need in our, let's just say, Western society of just go, go, go. Everything's faster. Everything's instantaneous. And we're always connected, but maybe not in the best ways, right? To use the title, like rooted connection. So shoot, we're like hyper connected with our phones and with these like wearables and all these things. Like we're always accessible, but are we actually accessible in the ways that we maybe want to or ought to be?
Yeah, there's a lot to get to in that. I'll take a stab at a few points here. I think, one of the things when we were building the retreat, we did first draw on our own, like what was meaningful to us, right? We wanted it to be sort of at least inspired the initial framework for us. And so what the things that were meaningful for us was like kind of a good mixture of like intentional content and time, like, right. But then like lots of space to digest that and, kind of also just have that like slow time, which is something like Lisa's taught me so much over the years, the value of that, of just like actually slowing down and letting stuff absorb. So we definitely were just played a lot with that as far as when we were building that. Yeah, and I don't know. That's one point, I guess.
Yeah, a couple other things that we took into consideration were we chose a retreat center that doesn't have Wi-Fi and really doesn't have a lot of cell service. And that was intentional. I, just like everybody else, can fall into that habit of being on my phone and, zoning out and getting lost in there. And when it isn't an option, you're more present to who you're with. And so that piece, I think, is maybe difficult for a lot of people, but I think it's really a powerful piece. And then when we were choreographing the workbook or the what did we call it?
The field guide.
The field guide. We wanted to give people bang for their buck. We wanted to ask them to work hard and invite them to really look deeply and, to do as much work as they could, because we know and recognize that taking a week away from work and family and obligations is a big lift. So we wanted to invite people to go as far as they could together.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about with that is like the chance to plant some seeds, like to do a little bit of the discussion and the work, but to have more in there that people can expand with it. I think that's part of what I hear you saying. And then the other thing is, and Lisa kind of touched on this earlier, is just this is a little bit of our East-West thing too, but like not just have these concepts be intellectual, right? But also like, how do we make them experiential? How do we make them embodied? So I think like having the yoga practice, having the movement practice, something like that, and also just like the connection with nature, like all of this stuff, right? Where we're really immersing in a lot of ways, right? Not just immersing in this material, but immersing in our physical experience, immersing in nature, and then by virtue of like a lack of distractions and the intention, just really being able to be present. So yeah, those are a bunch of the elements.
Yeah, I love that. So the devices is such a thing, and it was, yeah, if you asked me like a year ago, I think we would have really struggled with it, and maybe it's because of the age of our daughter, but then also like just hearing that there was more connection than we thought there's more like signal, I suppose, like I'm going to use a different word, than we thought there would be, but we were so prepared to be like, yeah, we're going to be off the grid. And so like preparing our daughter with that, and mother-in-law and my mom, like, and it was just like cool, like we're going to roll with it. And then the more and more, like at first it felt uncomfortable, but we're like, it probably feels uncomfortable because we need it so much, right? And I've said this before on the show, but if you feel uncomfortable leaving your phone in the other room, like we have some opportunity here, right? If you feel uncomfortable walking around, like literally your neighborhood, unless you live in like, a really unsavory area, but like then we have, some opportunity here. And I was that way, right? So I speak from this place of no blame, shame, but like where I felt like I needed to have my phone there. What if something happens? I've told the story to a few people where when getting new phones, like we were getting them uploaded and kind of transferred, and it was going to take a while, and then we didn't want to be late to go meet somebody, so I was like, you know what? Leave our phones. We're just driving 15 minutes away. I was in the parking lot and I started like freaking out a little bit, and I was thinking like not just like something crazy is going to happen, but I'm like, what if we get in this minor fender bender, literally like on the street, and someone's going to be like, you don't have your insurance card, you can't call it, like, what, who are you, like I can't take photos, and I'm going to feel like this big dummy, and I'm supposed to be an emergency prepared like guru. And meanwhile, what if, the person we're meeting can't meet us and we can't answer? I started verbalizing a little bit, and Chels can already see my like physical tension. And she's like, do you want to go back? I'm like, no, yes, no, but we're not. I do, but we're not going to, because I was like, it'll be fine. And I did not feel fine, but I felt like I needed to stretch that muscle, and everything was fine, truly. So I think that's so valuable.
I'm impressed you came on an 8-day retreat without your phone. For the most
part. For the most part. And we were really good about, we did a couple FaceTimes, like it worked out, and then, just having an airplane mode and wanting to capture some photos, but like we were really proud of ourselves and it felt really good. You just sleep better in nature. There's that aspect too. Like glamping is what I think like is a good like term for it. But yeah, going to yoga too. And I'm not like, I would never say, not never, at this point, I would not say I'm a yoga practitioner, but we've had Vance Rowe, Kendall Wood on the show. Like every time I hear about yoga, I'm like fully bought in. I'm like, I believe it. I just haven't committed. But to go to a retreat heavy on the yoga, where like for a week, basically every day, doing it usually 2 times a day, like I felt so good. And this is from like, bro lifting and all this stuff, but like my joints felt good, the breath work, the mindfulness, the meditation. And I think I shared with both of you, but with Chelsea for sure, she's like, how is it? How are you liking it? I'm like, I love it for the first 20-30 minutes. And then my brain goes like crazy, which is again, like something that says that I just need to stretch that muscle of just being more, because that mindfulness and that just presence is difficult for me, which shows that it's an opportunity, a work in progress.
It's a good reframe, Eric, what you're saying.
Reframe,
right? Embrace that, right? That idea that through discomfort comes growth, or when we're in a, often like, change happens outside of our comfort zone, right? All these different ways we talk about these things, but it really is true. We think about that like when it comes to like physical fitness or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. You have to, no pain, no gain a little bit, right? Push your body, break down the muscle so you can build it back stronger. But that's true in so many ways. And sometimes it's these ways we don't expect it, right? Like what can actually be discomfort of like trying to sit in an experience and be present, or just to be mindful of your breath for 10 minutes. I mean, that's something that honestly, like has been an ongoing effort and practice for me for a while to just be good with that, right? To just like make that a practice of, trying to be better with that. Like, just let me slow down and pay attention to my breath for a bit, or whatever it is, right? Yoga, right? Which sometimes people will look at as like, oh, that's just like stretching, or it's this easy thing. But it offers us a different set of opportunities. So I like your reframe about that.
Yeah. And like, shout out to Liz Suchinda, our yoga instructor and leader. That was along in the Portland area. For those listening in the Portland area, go check out her work. Yeah, I felt, and I think the whole group was agreed, like the split between like discussion, lesson, yoga, like I guess structured schedule versus unstructured. Like a lot of time at like the pool overlooking this beautiful jungle valley, and you're there with your person, or you're kind of there just relaxing or reading, but you're also there like, and then naturally you'd be talking to the other couples, and you can kind of be riffing on what takeaways you got and how do we integrate this stuff back at home. So I mean, we felt like it was all like, it just felt so right as far as the purpose and balance. And I know for a lot of those like driven types, they might want to be like, okay, I'm going to go away for a week and I'm going to slay this. Like I'm just going to crush this retreat. But it's like, yeah, there is work to be done, and there's that discomfort. And then even with that conversation, like, kind of Jim expanding, but going into what's uncomfortable and leaning into it rather than pulling away. Chelsea and I, like, I like to think we're pretty emotionally intelligent. We try to self-develop. We work on ourselves a lot. We talk about our relationship a lot. We are really vulnerable, but even then, after like 8 years of marriage and being together for going on 12 years, like, we still have our stuff, and we reached a new level of openness and awareness and that connectiveness that kind of boggles me, like, looking back. Like, we were at the Puerto Vallarta airport, and Chelsea was already kind of dreading like the stress of people and bustling and back in the city and the airport, and just not a fun place to be. But we felt pretty chill. And then we were talking about things that I did not think we'd be talking about. And it was not emotional. It was not tense. It was just like, yeah, I just feel like you're not going to judge me. And I feel like it's not going to come, there's not going to be these egos or, these insecurities from either of us. And it wasn't. It was pretty amazing. So, people think I like drank the Kool-Aid. Maybe I did, because there's something magical about the setting, both of you bringing in your insights. So maybe I'll direct it more toward Lisa now, because we are generally, those following the show are pretty, into mental health awareness and maybe the Western psychological therapy approaches. We talk about post-traumatic stress a lot. We just had an episode at the time of this recording. I think it's 213 with Rob and Sonia about internal family systems. And so, but something like, even though I do nerd out on some old school stuff, and like, yeah, my heritage is Chinese, but I did not know about these channels. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and how it integrates into what you were teaching us about on the retreat?
Absolutely. So the style of Chinese medicine that I practice is called classical Chinese medicine. And it's my teacher, Anne Cecil Sturman, was taught directly by Jeffrey Yuen, who's a 68th generation Taoist monk and shaman and Chinese medicine practitioner. So this lineage was an oral tradition for thousands of years. And so this is where that teaching comes from. And so there were two main areas that we talked about on the retreat where Chinese medicine and the channels overlap with Western psychology. I know there are a lot more, but one in particular, I did listen to your episode about internal family systems. So talking about different parts and understanding the parts and self, we kind of talk about, in Chinese medicine, we talk about a channel called Yin Wei Mai. And Yin Wei Mai is a channel that runs along your inner leg, up your torso, and ends here in your throat.
Can I just ask, like, I'm thinking about, even like, would it be helpful to say what a channel is?
Probably. Yeah. So in Chinese medicine, look at the body as the body holds a series of channels, of energy channels. We call them meridians. That's another word, a translation from Chinese. And these are the channels carry all of your energy or your qi, and they run all over your body. So is that helpful? I don't know if that explains
I think it is, and I will interject a little bit, because I think a lot of people, like, cut to me even like 5-10 years ago when I was learning aggressively about health and wellness. I would have been like, okay, now we're going somewhere woo. But that's the thing, is like, these things are like, whether it's traditional Chinese medicine or really around the world in these ancient, like these long standing traditions, there's some version of a lot of this that there is some sort of kind of intersection or crossover or overlap, which just to say like, yeah, your vitality, and we're doing better at measuring it. This is like, the slight deviation of, you'd make fun of one of my buddies because he had a wearable, like a Garmin or something, and we called his body battery, and he was into working out all the time, but he'd always come in like kind of like dragging because he wasn't sleeping enough, and like now he needed, this is years ago, but he needed a wearable to tell him his body battery was at 14%. But then we just knew these things to be true because people wouldn't feel well. They'd have these physical, mental, emotional kind of manifestations, right? And then they would address it with treatment, right? Physical treatment, herbs, food, nutrition, sleep. So that's kind of my sidestep to bring us back for those that are like, maybe that's a helpful kind of contextualization, from my understanding at least.
Yeah, and I'll just add, if I can, like one quick thing to kind of also bridge that. I want to come back to these channels, but like, yeah, I mean, the idea, I mean, this gets back to how we built the retreat, but also how Lisa and I have been talking about collaborating for years, because, you know, all these things we're talking about, they're conceptual, but they're in our lived experience. So like, for example, if we're trying to connect with emotions or parts, right, we might look to like our physical body to see like, where are those showing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of like what you were saying, Eric, like the development of all these systems over time through different cultures, this was wisdom that happened through lived experience, observing nature, all of this stuff. So I think it's not like people are making this up. Like there's like a real rich tradition and efficacy around this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think it's both that and the embodied practice of the channel. So anyway, I'll take it from there, please.
Yeah. I mean, to kind of back myself up a little bit, and to play off of what Jim is saying, Emily and Amelia Nagoski talk about this in their book Burnout, if you are familiar with it. They talk a lot about how animals will go into a stressful experience, be running from a predator, survive. And what they'll do is they'll stop, often they'll shake it off, and then they'll have a long period of rest. And as humans, the way our society has evolved, we often, many times in the course of one day, will have these experiences where we almost get hit by a car, or we're stressed and running, and we don't take the time to pause, shake it off, and rest. And so what happens from a Chinese medicine point of view, and Western science would agree, is that it ends up getting stored in the body.
And I just want to jump in because I think this is like super relevant for like first responder community, right? I mean, that's like every shift, right? That kind of stuff.
And that's quickly, but the material that our community is more familiar with is like zebras don't get ulcers, or the body keeps the score. That is a work that I think more and more people are like, oh, that makes sense. But it's like, even like both of you are saying, where do you carry tension? And that's something more people are like, oh, I can't see it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like everyone may know where they carry, like, is it in your jaw where you literally get migraines because of the stress of work? And yes, like the critical incidents or these kind of life-changing incidents that you talk about, it is popularized or socialized in our community that the average person might have a couple, and we deal with a couple hundred by the end of a full career. So yeah, absolutely. And I'll pass it back to you again.
Yeah, no, this is great. So, and Gabor Mate also talks about it in his book, The Myth of Normal. If anyone's interested in more sciencey reading, he does a great job of discussing this. But so after these instances, and when we don't take the time to slow down, process, and rest, the body, from a Chinese medical point of view, the body stores it. And the body's first priority is to protect the vital organs. So the body will often store these emotions, or I guess we'll call them unprocessed emotions, in joints and tissues, in what we call curious organs. But they stay there, and the body will try to keep them in latency, but eventually we will start to see them popping up in the physical body with symptoms. And as I started to say earlier, often with this type of work, this internalized trauma, in Chinese medicine, we'll use the channel that we call Yin Wei Mai. And this channel is about helping the body to release stored experiences and to place them, it says, to place them on the tapestry of life. So I envision this as a kind of like a cloak that someone wears that was behind them, releasing these experiences from the body and placing them outside side of the body so that you can have the memory, but your body no longer has that physiological response. So it's in working with PTSD, it's a really beautiful tool to use to help people release it from their physiology so that they can remember. And this can be a piece of their wisdom, but it is no longer something that causes a physiological response.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so powerful because, it's this notion of like you're carrying these rocks, and like that's something that a metaphor a lot of us resonate with, which is like these traumas or these experiences, and we're putting another rock in the backpack, and we're carrying this backpack like it's weighing down on us, or we're carrying it in front of us. Whereas like that visualization is very similar to one that I explored, post like losing my buddy and talking with a therapist, which was like, think about like sometimes it's putting the bad stuff in a box, and you like shut the box, you like visualize it. But then sometimes it's like there's good stuff in a different box, and how knowing where to find that and accessing that, right? So these are very tangible tools and like visualizations that can absolutely help us through these different things. Yeah, well, thank you for walking through that. And I think one thing that I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about, and I do want to spend some time on this, which is reintegration, right? Like I've sung the praises, I know, and we spitball different ideas of, do we do a panel with like, Liz, who was instructing, with Laura, who's been on before. Chelsea was even open to coming on, and some people have asked about Chelsea coming on to talk about being like, first responder wife or a cop wife. And she's like, that language, and I want people to hear this and have them scratch their heads, and we'll revisit this later. But she's like, I don't even think of it that way. I think of like, I'm your wife, and you have a job, but a lot of people have stressful jobs, and a lot of people have shift work. So that's something that we can peel back later too. But the reason why I didn't was because, 4, 5, 6 people, and I was like, man, we're just going to go all over the place, which could also be awesome. But one thing I wanted to share about was that, I've had different experiences in my life, and I feel grateful for my support systems and different aspects of health, kind of helping me through and reflect. And I suppose like a note I made was like, being very close to death and grappling with that, but feeling really high on life. And I think part of that was recognizing the potential loss, which is why I frame it with that is because after the retreat and being in the retreat, I was in a good place, but I was so focused on these negative things that are just kind of like these little thorns in my paw of life. But rather than being focused on those or being governed by this fear of, what might not be, I suppose what I'm trying to say is that in the process of being there and afterwards, I was like, man, until I took a step back, I wasn't able to reflect on how much more beneficial it is to just focus on positivity, abundance, and gain rather than loss, contrary to my prior experiences. So that's something I just kind of want to inject for people to think about as we explore all this notion of retreat, and however they may start to glean little things and be curious about how they can emulate this, whether they hit up both of you, which I highly recommend they do, or whether they see a retreat down the line, they're like, okay, now I'm more open and curious to that. Or if they're like, how do I take things of this and integrate it into my annual camping thing so it doesn't just become a quote unquote vacation? Like how do we kind of reconnect, whether it's your spouse, partner, or like your family? And so, but that's what, kind of rambling around a circle, that's, I suppose, priming like this conversation of reintegration, because the point is not to be there forever, even though we did joke about that and sending for our families and, becoming like the staff there or something. But like, yeah, where do we go from there?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm curious, what do you feel like you and Chelsea have been able to maintain or bring home now that it's been about 6 weeks post-retreat?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I would love to, well, it's not good. Nothing's good or bad. It just is. I felt so good like coming back, and I rolled into my work week. And the first couple days, I was like, I'm a changed man. Like these like stupid little things, or these, kind of, I won't say stupid little people. I'll say like these not positive kind of toxic people. They're not going to get to me. They're not going to get me down. But by like the 3rd, 4th, 5th day of the week, I was like, dang it, what happened? I'm back to where I was. But there's the recognition, and what we've talked through, and she had her own version of that, was knowing it's possible because we literally lived it, felt it, breathed it, talked about it. We were in it, and refinding that, right? And it's also not to say like it has to be the same. We're not there, but like we can get slivers of it. And so when we are patient with ourselves and releasing that angst of like, well, dang it, like, why is this? Like, I know logically or intuitively I could be feeling this way. Just recognizing it's it's an option, and maybe it's a snap decision of like, no, I'm going to focus on intention, and actually in 5 minutes I'm like, I do feel way better. That has happened, but also there's been the couple days, couple like sleeps, and I'm like, okay, no, I am better because I had to think about some of the things I learned. I've already revisited some of the things I journaled, kind of to take me back into that place, and I've been talking about journaling more here as a tool. So
I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that is, it is a common experience, right? I mean, that we expect that the transformational power of retreat is that we're just going to be like permanently shifted into some new state of being. And it's very often not the case, right? That we have to actually figure out how to integrate or, reintegrate into our lives. But something you said, I think that is really worth highlighting is the idea that you knew it was possible because you'd been there, right? And I think sometimes we can't do what we can't imagine, and if we don't have any reference for something, then it's hard to like imagine it, right? Or it just feels out of reach. I think that immersion experience that a retreat offers does give us a chance to really like shed. I mean, I'll speak for me personally, like shed a lot of layers and roles and weights that I'm carrying, or like put down that backpack in a way, right? And then, see more clearly from a distance, and then, our life and ourselves and each other. And that just the power of that is transformative. Even when we come back and we start like feeling some of these layers coming in, we know that something else is possible. And for me, and it sounds like for you, Eric, and I think for a lot of people, that provides kind of a, like just an awareness of like there's more, right? That there's this thing that I can get back to, and I kind of like, having experienced it, have a little bit more access to finding a path to it, even if I'm not there 24/7. So yeah, that's one thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Something that we, over the years, and this is years of progress, I think that every time we get away and take time to really intentionally retreat or go away for a weekend and vision together, whatever we're doing, we're able to unpeel another layer of the onion, and we come home and bring more of it with us. So we were able to do more. And one thing we've done for the past probably 2 years, maybe 3 years, is I've been meditating irregularly for about 25 years. But, have really in the last couple of years gotten more regular because we now meditate together. So we get up, brush our teeth, and go meditate. And some mornings when I didn't sleep well, or I don't want to get up, or vice versa, you kind of hear the little singing bowls chiming. You're like, oh, all right, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it. So it's this, there's never any, we never talk about it or pressure each other into joining, but there's always this open invitation, and it feels somehow more accessible because we're both making space for it and making it a priority.
Yeah.
So that's something that that's really
been
prioritized.
I couldn't agree more. It's like a gentle accountability, but it does, it's a little bit of time together in a way, but that's been probably one of the most powerful integration practices, or that we keep renewing. And just, yeah, I think you said it well.
And our kids know. So, our girls are older, but our little one, he knows if he comes up, he can, he can't talk to us, but he can sit on my lap, or he can play the singing bowls, but he knows that that's protected time and space. So that's been something that we've personally integrated.
That's cool. Yeah. He can play the singing bowls.
Oh, he's good. He did a whole project at school. Yeah. He took 7 singing bowls to school and did it for
Wow. I mean, I picked up a couple there, and I was like, I don't know what to do right now. I was not getting the flow of it. But, we were talking about getting one because it's super cool. And I was like, I realized I didn't share this with Chelsea. Like I've shared like in this goofy way that as part of my senior project, I built this 5-part a cappella group. But that wasn't like, that was the project part because I was in choir and stuff. And some listeners are like, where is he going with this? But there's a paper research component, and it was on music therapy, like sound therapy. And so like, this is like a fascination I had like a long time ago, right? Like my adolescence. And then to be in a sound bath, like this immersive sound bath with singing bowls and this like meditative practice, like that was so cool. And oh my, like this traditional Temescal, the sweat lodge, were basically baked in an urn. I mean, like that sounds a little bit intense. Some people are into it. I mean, some of the listeners will be like, yeah, give it to me. But like a sauna on steroids, on traditional ancestral steroids, but such a beautiful, like a traditional practice to be in that ritualistic environment. But then, I mean, we're talking about shedding, Jim, but I mean, that was a big theme for me and for everyone, but it's one thing I really focused on was that shedding. what is not serving you? What can you leave behind? And like most of that's fear, and it's fear based and it's negatively based. But what an amazing practice. That I mean, I'm pretty sure most cultures do go back to some rooted like sweat type of ceremony, right? Like the saunas, the bathhouses, and this process of cleanse, right?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Eric, because I think that's sort of another level of intention and something that's been really that I've found myself drawn to more in the last few years, and that Lisa's been really supportive around, is just like the power of ritual and ceremony. And if you just look across, like you were kind of saying, like history and cultures, right? Like there are so like the power of ritual and ceremony, like rites of passage or preparation or integration, like using that's like bringing intention into action and like having symbolic meaning. And like there's actually really good neuroscience about this too, right? That like the things we do with intention, like in the external, right, maps onto the internal. It's part of why we need to have rituals for the dead, right? So that we can come to do some of our mourning in that way, right? And also in connection with others, because most ceremony is done at least with a small gathering of community, right? So, but I think about like, first responders, military folks that I know is a lot of the audience of this podcast. But of course, I think this is generalizable to a lot of types of, lives that people have, but just like having that sense of ritual, community, connection, ceremony, it does so much. It gets us into our body. It helps integrate things. It helps connect us with ourselves and others. Yeah, those kinds of practices are integral to retreat, but I think there are also, some of them are practices that we can bring into our lives in really meaningful ways, right? And that could be, something like big or something small, like what Lisa was describing with our little ritual around meditation, right? That's a small thing imbued with a lot of meaning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And cut back and forth real quick, like the IFS was so great to talk about, kind of this parts work and understand like our foundational, like our childhood experiences forming these things, because we would explore it individually, do some writing reflection, and then share that. Because man, like again, like Chelsea and I would talk about our childhood, we talk about all these things intensely, but like it was so many light bulb moments of like, oh, this is your attachment style, this is my like very different attachment style, and this is how we both get so offended or defensive in these default practices. But then to see it up front and be able to remove this veil that starts to create this blame or shame. And so even in reflection, we've had a couple disagreements in the several weeks, but there's been a couple times where I was like, this is it manifesting. Like neither of us is wrong, but we're approaching it in this kind of basal way that's not helping the other at this moment, and be able to resolve that really quickly. But it doesn't come without work and discomfort and analysis, right? Reflection. I did want to mention that as far as like bringing back that individual into the couple, and then also like a ceremony kind of intentions, and we essentially like wrote some things to each other, like Chelsea and I. But it was such a beautiful kind of end cap and summarizing everything. But yeah, I just wanted to hit on those like other kind of aspects floating around in my brain with the retreat specifically that you both facilitated. And thank you so much for that very life relational changing experience. Now, for the listeners, is there anything that you would like to leave us with? And maybe we'll start with Jim because he's about to cut off. But whether it's about retreat or whether it's about relationships, because we're talking about all these things, and then also like anything else that is front of mind.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I appreciate you touching on some of those things. And there's quite a few things that we could keep talking about. So this has been fun. I guess, one thing I want to say just that felt really important to mention is that I think some of the magic of the retreat that we experienced, and I think we've experienced this on other retreats as participants, is just, the community and the connection that happened between the participants, right? And that's not something we can really plan for, but you were kind of touching on that idea of like that unstructured time hanging around in the pool and just kind of talking about stuff. I think there's something about being there with a group of people who are there, like saying like, hey, we want to do this for whatever it is. In this case, a couples retreat, we're focusing on our relationships, right? But to be there with some people that are kind of that intention, and then just the kind of magic that can happen of like, just talking and connecting with people like that. And that was so special and magical about the retreat. And I think something that's cool about retreat in general. And there was a few other things I wanted to mention, but Lisa and I are excited that we are going to be doing another retreat in January. So I want to kind of like shout that out. And also there are a lot of great retreat options for people. There's one that I wanted to mention that I can't find in my notes right now, but it's Strong Families, I think, is like one that's specific for first responder.
Yeah, stronger families.
There's so many other points I could make, but it's just been really fun to talk about it and to talk with you, Eric, and to have Lisa here. So I guess that'll be my final word.
Yeah. Where can we find Dr. Jim, your contact or content?
Yeah. Well, I have a small but mighty practice here in Denver, Colorado, and we're called Collaborative Counseling Colorado, and our Instagram is at Collab Counseling, and our website is denverccc.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doctor. Appreciate you being on, and we're going to turn it over to Lisa in case you have to jet for your fun run.
Yes.
Wellness. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Dr. Lisa, what comes to your mind in kind of summarizing what you'd like to recap and kind of end on this conversation?
I think the final thing I'd like to share is a tool that I think everyone can use. And it doesn't take long, but I think that it's something that if we start to practice in our daily lives, it can really start to shift our perspective and outlook, kind of like you were talking about, like, oh, I can operate from a positive perspective, or I can see the negative, right? Whatever you are looking for is what you find. And something that has been so profoundly impactful for me is learning to shift from my head to my heart. So instead of making decisions with my head, to really check in with my body to see how it's responding. And it can be so easy. And I think first responders would really understand this, because I think a lot of what they're doing when they're on the job is making decisions, split decisions that don't have time to go to their brains. They're just making decisions based on instinct.
Yeah.
And if you can bring that tool into your life by taking a moment, taking deep breaths, checking in with your body to see where you feel tension when something arises, or, if you're posing a question, do I want to go to A or B? Sit with it, take a deep breath, feel how you feel in your body when you think about A, and feel how you feel in your body when you think about B, and go with what your body says. Move through life in a relaxed state. You'll feel more relaxed when the thing is right, and that's a better direction for you to go. So I think that tool has been life-changing for me, is moving out of my head and into my heart, into my body.
Yeah, I love that. And like the takeaway I have like listening to that is, well, one, just that power of intention, right? And like that focused whether you call it a mantra or just like this, what my purpose is in this moment. I literally just had this conversation with somebody about just literally just thinking about this thing you want to achieve. And it was spurred off of like a podcast I'd heard, but it's just that, like, whether it's yoga or meditative practice, but even if this is all new to you, you can literally sit on your drive and think about calm, or like this happened the other day where it was a day at work, right? And it wasn't a bad day, it was just a very involved. I was very tired. But I rolled up and like on the last couple minutes of my drive, I just started thinking about this concept of joy. And joy is like so powerful. Like, I don't think we talk about joy a lot. Like it's a different layer of like happiness and like elation. I was just thinking joy, and like all these like good kind of joyful things in my life. And of course, like my mind goes to family, like my girls at home. And then it was weird. Like it's raining and I'm on the phone and I'm talking to this guy, and I look over and I kind of hear this murmuring, and I look over on the porch, like through the rain, like Marley's just like waving, and I'm like, she's never out here. It's so goofy, but just reflecting on that. So that was so powerful. But then the other piece of that is kind of, as you're talking about kind of approaching things with this calm or this relaxation. So often we carry all this tension in first responder work. The hypervigilance is profound. And for those like in police, which that's what I know best, is like you're driving around and you feel like you're a target, as you should, like responsibly. But there's such a difference in prior conversations I've had with other cops, which is you could be in like dialed like hypervigilance up to 99, 100, where you are ready for the worst at every moment. But that actually doesn't serve you well, because it paralyzes you. Because if I actually think I'm going to be shot at any moment, then that's not operationally sound. I'm going to burn out, but also I won't be prepared for all the other things that may happen, which are usually not that. However, if I'm aware, but then I just bring it back to I'm ready for whatever comes, and because of my training and mentality and all these things that may happen, and I will address that if that so happens. But I will make responsible decisions through the course of my thing, on my day-to-day. Makes me think of like Bruce Lee, like be like water, right? Like it can be this like giant waterfall that can just like start eroding rocks down below a typhoon, or it could just be like, in your drinking glass, in your like little, bird feeder, like your little water fountain, right? So, so calm and nourishing. Any other thoughts, Lisa? And please do tell us where we can find you if people want to get in contact there.
Yeah, I have a very kind of small private practice in Denver also. I was working in nonprofit for the last 10 years. And so I've just in the last year gone back into private practice, and it's grown organically. So I don't have a website. I don't have anything. But you can find me on Instagram, and I post very sporadically, but I will respond to messages. Be a gentle human. So be a gentle human.
I love it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And that small but mighty that Jim put out, like I feel like getting into this social media and podcasting game was to have these valuable conversations at scale. But truly, like in the last few days, I've been reminded of like the potency and just like the value of quality over quantity. Just a lot of reconnections and like genuine like conversations with people because of this project essentially has been so rewarding, right? Like the likes are one thing, and I know a lot of people that listen also do something like this. Like we cross pollinate, we chat about the things we chat about, which is a weird way to nerd out, but that is encouragement because people do literally ask like, hey, I want to start like a podcast too. And like, remember why you're doing it. And it was really just to help like a few people in a way more just scalable way. So I so appreciate both of your example, both your connection, your friendship, your mentorship, and what you're doing for like our bigger capital C community.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.